Hey, welcome to the lesson 5. This is the second lesson in the Mesopotamia unit. We learned that Mesopotamia is a region in the Middle East that was first settled about 8,000 years ago when people began to farm and give up the nomadic lifestyle of hunting and gathering to grow crops instead. Today we're going to talk about Mesopotamia's economy. An economy is the management of available resources of a country or region. Mesopotamia would be considered a region, particularly in regards to the production and consumption of goods and services. So we're going to look at Mesopotamia's economy in terms of agricultural production and trade. Mesopotamia had some of the best farmland of the ancient world. Mesopotamia's economy relied heavily on farming and raising livestock to survive. Most Mesopotamians grew crops, usually grains such as wheat and barley, and raised livestock such as goats and sheep. So we're talking mostly about wheat and sheep when we talk about their agricultural production. They used irrigation to water crops, particularly in southern Mesopotamia, and used irrigation to also improve crop yields so that they would get better yields, better production out of the land and crops that they planted. Mesopotamians dug irrigation canals. This brought water to the fields, but as we learned in the last unit, sometimes these floods would be destructive, so they also dug irrigation ditches and built dams to divert flood water away from fields and away from villages to limit the damage from these floods. Irrigation systems required a lot of work to build, but also maintain and repair, so they elected leaders, rulers. These are eventually become kings that were in charge of maintaining the irrigation systems, and this is one of the early forms of government. The community worked together on public works projects, which we talked about in the last unit, to build and repair these canals, and the physical labor was a tax payment, and these public works projects included most of the community working together for the benefit of everyone, because without these irrigation systems, farming would not happen and everyone would starve to death. We have many advancements in farming, including irrigation. This made farming better and easier. They also developed the plow, as you can see in this picture here, which was dragged behind animals that would allow them to make plant crops easier. They used math to help them measure plots using geometry. They would use record keeping to keep track of what they planted, what they harvest, and also trade, which we'll talk about later. They also developed a 12-month calendar, which would allow them to plan when to prepare the fields, when to plant their crops, and when to harvest their crops. The economy of Mesopotamia also relied heavily on trade, and they made major advancements in both trade and transportation, which was necessary due to the way they would trade. They traveled to areas outside Mesopotamia using wheeled carts and boats. They developed the wheel, which was used for wheeled carts. They developed leather tires on the wheels to transport people and goods from place to place within the region. They could sail far away using a sail and sailboats, and they'd use wind power to propel them and go as far as modern-day India, which is quite a ways away from Mesopotamia. And they used astronomy to really navigate their way and tell their location to these faraway lands and to return safely. They traded materials that were common in Mesopotamia, such as wheat and wool, but since materials were fairly limited in Mesopotamia, there were a lot of things that weren't common in Mesopotamia. To get these, they had to trade. They traded for stone, lumber, metal, and many other products. And similar to today, if you traded outside your region or outside your country, there were tariffs or other fees, basically a tax on goods from things coming from outside their state. They kept economic records using tokens early on, and they used this to keep track of agricultural production and trade. So we're talking about tokens, mathematics, and writing, and how this helped them keep records. And we're talking more about that in the next unit, which is record keeping in Mesopotamia. All right, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you later. Bye.